on day 21, we'll continue on environments with composition. Now, how does composition differs from the other kind of visual representations? We'll still preserve our principle of clarity, diversity, and synergy. But contrary to the other kind of graphical representation, namely here, the characters role, we'll focus our attention on a different kind of subject. When it comes to characters, characters are defined by their quirks, especially visually. You can recognize a character easily thanks to her silhouette, thanks to her accessories. Now you want to focus the attention of the public in a composition on a specific part of the board, of the map. There's a specific point, a specific subject, which should retain all the attention. When it comes to diversity, same thing. Now, how does it differ from character? The possibilities you have in terms of diversity in a composition are much higher since you have more elements, more than in a character. We'll get back to this remark later in this episode, because we want to show you how to turn something that looks like a character into an environment. So let's check that at the end of the episode. And in terms of synergy, you'll have the ability here to combine and to display the circumstances that put different themes together. Now, much like in our lesson on regional maps, when it comes to composition, you want to create a visual continuity, a territorial continuity between multiple elements. And these multiple elements, since they all represent themes, will be linked thematically. If you're not sure how to start, you want to begin with a simple perspective. Place a dot anywhere on your board, and this dot will serve you as your focus point. Now, from this focus point, you want to trace lines, and these lines will allow you to create your perspective. So knowing that we have this dot here, and you have to be flexible, because you can change the center of focus as you advance in your reflection. You want to trace at least 2 lines to create a perspective. But you can go for more, you can go for real complete walls of, that's what we're going to do here. You can create walls of buildings, for example, and trace some extra buildings on both sides of what can be a road, of something that can be maybe a river. You want to define what this environment is through simple forms, through simple shapes first. So block out your composition and create some visual elements that are easy to identify. Now, for example, we have buildings on one side of what could be a road, what could be a river. Let's say it's a river. So we have these elements here, which are buildings, skyscrapers, maybe towers, and in the middle we have our river. It fluctuates from our focal point to us, and this fluctuation may be punctuated by additional elements. So maybe you have small islands where the river starts to flow. That's just a draft, that's just the blocking phase. You want to put all the essential visual elements. Now you want to create some contrast as well, and the fact that you have 2 sides, 2 boards to your river, allows you to create another side which is visually different. For example, maybe you want to create different kinds of building. Maybe broader building as opposed to the taller building you have on the side. And maybe you want something a little more chaotic. All the others were just much more aligned. What about creating a sense of superposition? You have smaller buildings in front of each other. Doesn't really make sense here with the perspective, but let's try something a little different in terms of shapes. Say you have these buildings as well. You have different kind of form. Maybe it breaks a little bit the thematic here, but that's really what you want. You don't want your environments to be uniform, except if it's your story. But if you make use of a road, if you make use of a river, if you make use of any of these figures of opposition when it comes to visual representation, but to make use of it as much as you can. For example, you can really overcharge one side. You can put too much buildings here, and on the other side we could have a single house. We could simply erase this part and put just a single house right here, or have just one house that's still inhabited and the rest is desert, showing us the progression from an older part of a town to a newer part of the town. So let's figure out, that's the new block, that's the modern block. That's where people are going to fluctuate for new jobs, for new occupation, for entertainment, and that's the older part of town that people are trying to escape from. And in the bottom, our focal point, you have the administration center. Now remark how the shapes are different here. These in red may be buildings, but let's suppose they're not. Let's suppose that the administration is directly dug into the mountain, and people work for the government here. The government works inside the mountain, because maybe the government is a different kind of people, is made of a different kind of people, and you want to accentuate the disparity when it comes to the relationship between the different people which populate this town. So you want to create these spaces through the river. Maybe these three spaces in red are meant to monitor the population, the population on one side, which is growing, and the population on the other side, which is supposed to be declining or to be moving elsewhere. Now, that's how you create a simple composition, a very simple composition. And you can add some additional elements. For example, you can add creatures if you want to add some more visual contrast. Creatures which are not meant to be here. Creatures which are not part of the composition normally, but which would indicate to the reader, to the public, that some elements may come in future chapter. You can make use of foreshadowing through color. Now that's a simple composition, a simple perspective. Every composition begins with the use of simple shapes and contrasted color, illustrating what you want to put into your story, what you want to display through your story. Subject here is these creatures, these three large plants. Now you may realize that these three plants are represented in green, which is a typical color for them. But it's not the same green. The plant in the middle just goes for something more bluish, to display the influence of the creature in blue on itself. Now, the position of the plant itself, the pose of the plant, if it was a character, would suggest that it is suffering, And the source of this pain may come here from the creature in blue. Now you may realize the two other plants, which are represented with a more vivid green, are not infected by this creature yet they're sensing the pain of their peer. Here you may consider that the central subject, the main subject of the picture, is the combination of both the plant and the creature, because it is this relationship which is put in the center of the image, which is most displayed to the public. You may realize a group of characters in red, orange, and purple in the bottom left corner of the image. These characters all seem to be looking at the infected plant, and the plant itself seems to be pleading, in a way asking for their help. And it is what the conversation you may imagine between the group of characters and the plant may suggest. Now, if you want to imagine the story behind this picture, you may imagine a quest of this group of characters, which would help the plant, would assist the plant, or may get rid of the creature in blue, or may find a new home for the character in blue. You have multiple choices in a due situation, so try to cultivate these choices, try to cultivate this sense of freedom, this sense of multiple possibility to make your improvisation easier. In this next composition, the little robot on the left may be considered the main subject. This robot looks in the direction of the tree, or in the direction of the valley behind the tree. You choose. But this robot really looks like it's interested by nature. So now, by putting this little machine here and this tree on the other side of the image, you just simply display a relationship, a simple paradox or a simple synergy, which is fairly common, the relationship between technology and nature. And it's displayed here in a very direct manner. The machine itself, the little robot, is watching nature, is maybe questioning itself about her relationship with nature, or if it can have a relationship with it, since it's not directly coming from it. Of course, the material which have served to construct it, the different metal, the different mechanical elements of which the machine is composed, directly come from nature, but been extracted from nature. And if you want to write the story of this little machine exploring nature, you may want to revise its organic relationship with nature in terms of structure, in terms of pieces, literally, in terms of animation, in terms of movement. What can this robot do to imitate nature? And simply the contemplation of the different environments, of the different settings which are available to this little machine. Now, for the graphical part, finally, we have three main colors here. We have green, blue, and red. And these three colors are meant to be the main colors in this section of the story, which could serve as a book cover or as a middle page for your book. And this scenery and these three colors have been picked in order to aggregate three main themes. Now, the robot itself, the little machine, is in gray. So gray here could be any of these three colors. This gray could be saturated green, could be saturated red or blue. So, in a sense, the robot, the machine, has three possible orientations, three possible directions, three possible choices. Does it want to be green? Does it want to be red? Does it want to be blue? And you attach to each of these colors different signification. And each of these three signification can become a main theme of your story. So the adventure of this little robot may be the first three chapters. It tries, for example, green. And then in chapter 4, 5, and 6, it tries red. And finally, in chapter 7, 9, and 7, 8, and 9, it tries blue. For finally, in chapter 10, being still unable to pick any of these three colors and decide that the three are just as valid as the other, as it should. So just with a clear initial imagery and a clear choice in terms of color and of forms, you give yourself a lot of choice when it comes to storytelling and improvisation. Now in our next composition, we'll study the importance of light on an environment. The environment here is pretty simple as well. In the bottom left corner, you have a settlement, or what appears to be a settlement. A small city, which is formed of three layers. In the most bottom layer, you have the larger mass of the city. In the upper layers of the city, you have buildings, which are built inside a cave, or what seems to be a cave or a hole, which is represented by the darker space around this part of the city. So you may imagine that this city, this settlement, is not homogeneous. It has different blocks, different quarters, different regions, different areas, which are supposed to inhabit multiple kind of individuals. And now these individuals may not live together per se, they may just live in the same space, but may have a lot of conflict already. There's another part on the bottom right corner. This part is represented here by a tower or a building which has collapsed. Now this tower, this building, is still in good shape, even if it's been declining in terms of structure, in terms of steadiness, in terms of solidity, but the whole shape, the whole form of the building is still here. The tower is not pointing at the sky, but is still pointing at the sky, but it may not be habitable yet. So it may be a ruin. Some of the inhabitants of the settlement might be living here there, or some inhabitants which were excluded from the settlement may live there. So the life condition in this place are likely to be much more precarious. The third and last part of this composition is a stairway leading to a yellow golden door. Now this door appears to be floating, or at least appears to be resting on nothing. But you may realize that we have some sort of orangey brown cloud in the back of the picture, which may be dust, which may be sand. It seems to be quite cloudy and impedes the public. It prevents you from seeing what may be behind this cloud. So maybe behind this cloud you have more hills, you have a mountain, and maybe those hills, this mountain are supporting this door. Maybe this door is simply leading to this place which is just beyond the view of the public. Now let's switch the light here. As we are now changing the color of the light, because there was a direct opposition between where the settlement is situated and where the light source comes from. You have now a very different impression on the action of the light. When the light wasn't colored, when the light was still quite clear, the impression here may have been, it may have been another word. The specifics of the semantic here are not what matter, but let's say this light gives you an impression of a hope. Let's keep hope as our main word here. The light here evokes you the sensation, this emotion of hope. Now, if you flip the switch, the light doesn't seem to be protective at all. It doesn't seem to be attractive at all. And you'll replace. Just try different words, try different phrases, try different kind of emotions. tests. But what remains is that the sensation, the global feeling of the picture is completely different now. You may even consider that these two are exuding opposite emotion. Whereas it was hope here, now it's fear, it's duress. So that's about the impact of light on a picture. Traditionally, we tend to separate characters from environments. But when it comes to creature design, when it comes to environmental design concerning the living things, the creatures, the animals, you may say, or the plants, depending on the level of sentience and sapience of your species, you're freer. And you're especially free if you intend to create your own species. Now, how does it relate to composition? Well, you may consider that an animal, any animal, it applies to a humanoid species as well, is formed of multiple areas. That's what the systems, the anatomical and physiological systems in an organism are. This creature is formed of multiple tissues, of multiple kinds of cells which are specialized to answer to different functions, which responds to specific needs. Now, that's what an environment does. The different parts of an environment are inhabited by different creatures. They are here to answer to a specific need, because they all have a specific function, specific role. And how do you transcribe that into a drawing? Well, the environment you can see now, because let's consider that's completely environmental, is the aggregation of multiple creatures. This environment is the cumul of all these bodies, these organic matter, which are, as time passes, may now have turned to mineral. These living creatures may now be inert. They have not lost their original form, but they've lost their life. And now you're facing a construct which could become again if it's your story, an animated mountain. This lithospheric structure, this creature or former creature, which is made of mineral now, still retains the expressions, the features, the quirks of all the living beings which have formed it. If we look at the right side of the picture, we can clearly see what seems to be a nose and an eye, so part of a face, but the mandible, the lower part of the mouth, detached from the cranium. And now all's left is the cranium itself. If you look at the top left part of the picture, you can see the amalgamation of different other creatures which do not seem to be humanoid species. And these different kind of creatures have agglomerated here. Not almost. They have literally fused with one another to create this mass, this large mass of rock. Same for the bottom of the picture. It is now a congregation of multiple species, a mountain of species, amassed one on top of the others. And you may realize quite fast the diversity of heads, of size, of facial features is used here, just to create more visual contrast, even if we only have one color here. Contrast is created through colors, but through forms also. And you may see that there's a play on the tilts here. All the heads do not have the same inclination. Most of them are in profile view, but you can see that many heads are in 3/4. So that's it for our episode on composition. We want to create contrast. When we create in composition, we want to create contrast around a subject. This is our subject. Now we've established it, we want to refine it, but still by using clear forms and a diversity of colors if necessary in order to create visual contrast, because visual contrast supports thematic contrast.